Good evening. What's up? What's up? What's up? And good evening, all you family members and friends. Stage Left, Top Class Radio. To the finest audience out there, we thank you for tuning in to this very special edition of Stage Left right here. It's your girl, your big sis, L Vintage. And you know what we came to do? We came to share some words, share some love with you, and make sure that you have something that you can tuck in your pocket and say, listen, I got something that I can hold on to, and I can take it, and I can move forward with it, right? So, first thing we're going to do, get a little business out the way. I need you to go on over to the IG and click like, follow, and share at 609 Stage Left. That's at 609 Stage Left and Top Class Radio. And you can go on over, hop on over to Facebook and do the same right there at 609 Stage Left and Top Class Radio. We are here live and jive at the station. We have a special guest in the building. Well, online with us, Pastor Willie Dwayne Francois the Third. Y'all know y'all gotta do. Y'all gotta make sure you share some love on this page. Make sure you tell Pastor Francois you love him. You can't get enough of him. And thank you for his service, effortless and unconditional love for the community and the household of faith. We love you, Pastor Francois. And thank you for accepting our invitation. How are you?
Nah, thank you for having me. I'm excited about being here tonight. You're one of my faves, one of my favorite voices in the community. You serve as a conscience for our county, and I really appreciate the invitation and for all that you do, the footprint that you spread to make us better and make us more conscious.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm grateful. I couldn't do it. Listen, I couldn't do it without being out there by myself. I'm telling you, I'm taking notes from you, Pastor. I'm telling you, I'm taking notes. I see your hustle and the love that you have, the passion you have behind all that we do endeavor to do, especially within our communities, and seeing the difference between black and brown communities and other communities and where we come short at. It's not easy. It's not an easy fight, and sometimes it does get a bit dogmatic and hard. Thank God for prayer.
Yo, right. That's one of the safety nets. That's one of our safety nets.
Come on now. So I'm gonna read your bio for everyone out there. Yes, Pastor Francois does have a bio, and I'm going to read it. I got in trouble with Sister Maria and Sister Utica because I read the bios too. I wasn't playing. um, okay. Call to empower Pastor Willie Dwayne Francois III. Call to empower people through transformative preaching, teaching, and organizing. Willie Dwayne Francois III serves as the senior pastor of Mount Zion Baptist Church of Pleasantville, New Jersey, and the president of the Black Church Center for Justice and Equality. Shout out to Mount Zion Baptist Church. And
Yup.
yes, to the Black Church Center for Justice and Equality. He is a 2009 Phi Beta Kappa graduate of Morehouse College with a Bachelor of Arts in History and Religion, named the ranking scholar in both departments. And while at Morehouse, he was named the 2009 Martin Luther King Jr. Scholar. Francois received the Master of Divinity from Harvard University's Divinity School, where he received the Hopkins Shareholders Award and the school's highest academic recognition, and served as the class of 2012 commencement speaker. In 2020, Francois earned a Doctor of Ministry degree from Emory University, where his research met at an intersection of anti-racism, theology, and anti-incarceration policy advocacy. Come on. I mean, from 2013 to 2015, Francois served as an associate pastor of First Corinthian Baptist Church, FCBC, in Harlem, New York, where Pastor Michael A. Walrond Jr. is the pastor. Did I say that right? Walrond. Prior to joining FCBC team, he served as the Minister of Christian Education and Discipleship at Wheeler Avenue Baptist Church in Houston, Texas, Houston, Texas, under his pastor, Reverend D. Marcus D. Cosby. Reverend Dr. Marcus D. Cosby. Francois was licensed and ordained at the First Union Baptist Church of Galveston, Texas. Woo! Woo. Listen, this is crunchy, y'all. Francois lives in the intersection of life of the spirit and the life of the mind. His most recent book, published by Brazos Press in August 2012, Silencing White Noise: 6 Practices to Overcome Our Inaction on Race, draws on said work as a community organizer and anti-racism education. He is the co-author of Christian Minister's Manual for the Pulpit and Public Square for All Denomination, the most progressive and comprehensive clergy resource, and the first interdenominational manual written for black clergy in 56 years. He has written for the Huffington Post, Religion Dispatches, Civil Eats, The Hill, and the Christian Century concerning a range of matters proving around race, class, and religion in America. In 2017, Francois was inducted into the Martin Luther King Jr. Board of Preachers at Morehouse College. Francois gives oversight to the Master of Professional Studies program, which operates at Sing Sing and Bedford Hills Correctional Facilities, and is assistant professor of liberation theology in New York Theological Seminary. Likewise, he holds adjunct positions in the African American Studies program at the University of Houston and at Samuel DeWitt Proctor School of Theology in Virginia at Union University, respectively. He also serves as a visiting professor at Memphis Theological Seminary, and in addition to publishing various articles and sermons, Francois previously served as a member of the Young Preachers Leadership Team of the Academy of Young Preachers Leadership Team and of Preachers, the director of the Young Ministers Corner of African American Lectionary, and a civil rights scholar for the imaging of the King Paper collection through the Martin Luther King Jr. Center for Nonviolent Social Change in Atlanta. Wow. Francois' pastoral activism is organized around racial equality, economic justice, and radical criminal justice and education reforms nationally. As an anti-racism curricula developer and educator, he has also worked with Latinx. Is that how you say it?
Latinx, yeah.
Latinx, okay. Black, Asian, and white Christian congregations looking to combat racism and frame their public faith with progressive advocacy. He serves as a co-chair for the National Social Action Commission, a progressive National Baptist Convention, PMBC. The denominational home of Martin Luther King Jr. through the Bill Lucy Fellowship. Francois represented the Samuel DeWitt Proctor Conference in a global conversation on mass incarceration and the Transatlantic Roundtable on Religion and Race at the University of London, Birkbeck in London, England. Race at the University of London, Birkbeck in London, England. He currently serves on the board of trustees for the Proctor Conference for 2014 and 2015. Francois was named the Beatitudes Society Fellow, focusing on congressional responses to mass incarceration and empowering returning citizens. In 2018, Community Change named Pastor Willie an Economic Justice Fellow. In 2019, Governor Phil Murphy appointed Willie to the Martin Luther King Jr. Commission of the New Jersey State Department. The father of Willie Dwayne Francois IV, Francois attributes his life of love and dedication in doing the so-called impossible to his close-knit family. He is a proud member of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated. Ladies and gentlemen, stage left audience, Pastor Willie Dwayne Francois III. Hello, Pastor.
Yo, yo, yo.
Listen, I mean, that's a whole novel right there, though. A whole novel.
I thought Maria sent you the short version, but
Listen, she said I want to get everything in there, every bit, and that's a good thing because I'm one to believe that everyone, when we put this work in, we definitely have to notice those who are putting the work in. And we want to make sure you get your flowers. So we humbly appreciate you. We honor you. Thank you for fighting and being boots on the grounds and hardcore and going to the top and never backing down. We appreciate you.
No question.
So we're going to get into some of these questions.
Let's do it.
Yeah. Well, first, I would like to know how pastoring Mount Zion is going. I mean, I really know, but some of the people don't know. This is one of the best pastors in the area, y'all.
That's love. That's love.
Listen, we appreciate you.
It's the Mount Zion Church is a joy for people who are definitely committed to God, and as a result of that commitment to God, they have a radical love for all human flesh, all human persons, and the way we demonstrate discipleship. One of the ways we demonstrate discipleship is doing the work of social justice and community investment and development. So I'm privileged to pastor a space that lets me live out my call and the way I understand following Jesus through the work of civic engagement, civic imagination, and protest.
Absolutely. That's amazing, because I think, especially since the pandemic and since so much unrest has gone on, we have community havens. As a matter of fact, my church is one of them, New Shiloh. Shout out to New Shiloh, NSBC. We've learned to work with the community and to pour into the community. There's not many churches that do that as often, and I see you doing that, and I'm so humbly grateful for what you pour into the communities. And I'm talking serving food, there's clothing, there's drives for gift cards, you're feeding the families, and so we thank you. That let me let you know, from the community's heart to yours, we humbly thank you for continuing to be that advocacy and that open avenue for families and community members right here in Pleasantville.
Nah, it's our honor to do it. I mean, it's our responsibility to do it. We appreciate the gratitude, but even if it was thankless, it's the work that we feel a very clear cosmic tug to do. We do it because it's what the world needs, and we do it because it's what the Lord requires.
Absolutely. All right, so let's hop into these questions because I'm itching.
Do it.
All right, so we're going to go from the topics recovering Black America and the strength of Black America. There's a lot going on. There's a lot going on, and I feel like one of the things that our community lacks in a lot of ways is a strong unification of leadership. And togetherness. When the community sees the leadership separated and not together, then they feel like they don't have anywhere else to turn. Sure. And so I'm wondering how do we connect with our very communities from the streets, being active on the streets and in the schools and at the polls, because it's voting season.
Right. What we know for sure is that this is one of the most fragile times in the history of our democracy. I don't know that the country has been as divided as this since probably the height of the civil rights movement, and maybe even right before or even during the American Civil War. Both of those previous times were America wrestling with its deformity of its national deformity related to racism, and the way racism and capitalism have married each other to create chattel slavery, to create Jim Crow, Jane Crow politics that we found in the 1960s.
Yes.
And now in this era of hyper incarceration of Black and brown bodies, all of these moments have been times where racism and capitalism have forged the type of alliance that has been detrimental to Black life, and detrimental to non-white life and poor white life too, which I think is important to name. So we're at a moment that is just as fragile, just as vulnerable as any other moment we've ever experienced in this country. When I think about those other times where America was actually cannibalizing itself, right? Where America was eating its young and eating its own through slavery, through lynch culture, through Jane Crow, and now in this era that we have termed the war on drugs, or this moment of hyper police brutality, is that this moment is distinct because of something called January 6th, where literally race and religion work together to back a tyrant, an authoritarian that literally almost cost us the democracy. And so when we talk about what is necessary right now, I think it's important for us to figure out, how do we achieve Black unity without succumbing to the myth of Black uniformity? Because there is not a moment where we will all agree on the same methods. It's not a moment. There is no moment in this country where we've ever seen a type of uniformity where everyone understood one playbook forward. But what we do know, and I believe Paul Robeson said this, that even though Black people don't all vote alike, all black people believe that we should have the right to vote, right? That we are unified in the sense that Black bodies should be treated as human, and Black lives should be able to flourish. So a part of what we have to achieve in this moment is, how do we fight for, find common ground for unity, even though we'll never find uniformity. And I say that because we're not going to all agree on major. We're not going to all agree on major issues.
Hello. Oh, I think we lost him. Just give us 1 second, Pastor Francois. Just give us 1 second. Lost connection. Yes. Just give us a second, everybody. We'll be right back. We'll be right back. Pastor? I don't know what happened. We lost you there for a second.
Got you.
But we back.
The last word I was saying. We may not agree on all the pathways. We may not even agree on all the policies, but we have to be in agreement that Black life is worth fighting for, and that Black life deserves freedom, it deserves justice, and it deserves the kind of dignity that is required to be human.
I mean, and what baffles me is that we were, I don't want to say ancestral, but our elders before, Black Wall Street, black owned banks, those types of things. We were educated enough to hang on to it, even with the unrest then, and then post. It seems like after all of the attacks, we just couldn't get it back together, or because we've lost so many big people. People were afraid to come back out. Do you feel like that's what's happening now? People are afraid to really speak up and speak out and step up.
Yeah, I do think there is a kind of social fear and social paranoia that exists about speaking out for one's rights, because we saw the death of Medgar Evers. We saw the demonization of a Rosa Parks. We saw the incarceration of an Angela Davis. We saw the exile and the political imprisonment of so many Black Panthers, that there is something in the Black imagination that has, to some extent, created the specter of violence for those of us who dare to speak out. Another piece that I would think is a part of this, and it may be more a part of this than the actual social fear connected to the trauma of violence that has been inflicted upon Black bodies, is the fact that there are a lot that the Black middle class, although it is tenuous, it is not as strong as we believe it is. Many of us have succumbed to what I call the sedation of assimilation. Wow. We've become far too American to actually live in solidarity with the majority of Black people who are still living beneath the poverty line, particularly Black women and Black children. Wow. And so we have to also do something about the ways that we have bought into the narratives about America's social mobility, around pulling yourself up by your own bootstraps. This myth that if you work hard enough that you will achieve the American dream. Some of us have become so American that we forgot what it actually means to live in solidarity with those who actually built America.
Wow. This is why I needed you here. I mean, I definitely concur. And it's a brainwashing effect, especially culture to culture. Well, within our own culture. Can I say that first?
No, you can.
It feels like, we attack each other more within the culture, but it isn't fixed within our culture. It isn't, we're not doing the healing part. We're not doing the work to help each other to heal and help ourselves, first of all, ourselves to heal. So we keep throwing the same darts at each other. It's like a recycling trifecta. It just constantly keeps happening. And it feels as though once we're on that lens, that's what the world and the Americanized lens looks at. It looks at us targeting each other, and we're not realizing that a lot of that may hinder what we're really going for, our goals. So it's just kind of, it's like shady business.
Yeah,
I'm gonna tell you, stop calling me the N-word, but I'm gonna call my brother the N-word.
Yeah.
Right in front of you. You know what I mean? Yeah. And it's just, for me, it's very bothersome.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that we don't talk about enough in Black-led, Black-dominated spaces is the threat and the danger of internalized racism, internalized oppression, right? Wow. I'm very, in the book Silencing White Noise, 6 Practices to Overcoming Our Inactional Race, my most recent book, I talk about how white supremacy can live in Black bodies. Wow. That we too have the capacity to vomit and regurgitate some of the same anti-Black thinking, anti-Black logic, anti-Black ideas that you can find in the most KKK dominated spaces. Right. Why? Because that's the work that white supremacy does on all flesh. It's what white supremacy does to all minds. Yes. And so I always want us to be clear that the kind of violence that we find in Black communities, the kind of intra-hatred that we find in non-white communities, is also a symptom and a product of the larger project of white supremacy. And if we can't name it that way, then we end up only blaming and pathologizing the victims, which we are, without actually giving a proper diagnosis to how we got here in the first place. So some of the diagnosis has to be, how have we as Black people internalized and digested the negative narratives and the untrue histories about Black people?
Wow. That's a dialogue that definitely needs to go on in this community. I just feel as though, sometimes we definitely overlook those matters because we're stuck on what we see and what we want, and we don't really internalize that healing and take the time to do so. And that's a very valid point. Thank you so much for that. That was a chunk of meat by itself. I hope you all are out there listening. Please grab your notebooks, your pens, take some notes. Become that advocate. We need advocates every day in the community, advocating for children's rights, women's rights, for family rights, men's rights. Incarceration, our incarceration level, our status and stats are ridiculously through the roof. And when we look out there now, it's this generation that's being incarcerated. And I think that's what strikes me even more. It's like we're continually turning this same paddle and we're just throwing each other back and forth. And, we need people to step up and to help with this fight. Am I right, Pastor?
No, we do. And we have to be able to actually name the terms of the fight. Part of what I think the tragedy is that we talk about racism as if it is some sort of abstraction, some idea that's in the sky, or as if racism today looks just like racism did years ago. I think we have to have a very particular assessment and analysis of what's going on.
Absolutely.
Right? This form of racism is much more covert. It is baked into all of the systems.
Yes.
We as non-white people perpetuate it.
Yes.
This is a very different moment that racism exists, right?
That's true.
And don't forget this. It's Black cops beating up other Black people.
Come on.
Right? Let's not forget that.
Unreal.
It's Black school board members that are defrauding Black students in public education, right?
Yes.
Let's not forget, it's Black politicians who are also colluding with white money interests, right? This is a very different way of thinking about racism, right? And think about how racism is working because of the ways that it's able to puppet and use Black life. That's one way, but also that it's not about interpersonal animus or interpersonal antagonism, but it is really about systems. It's about logic. It is baked into the economy. There's no mistake why Pleasantville and Atlantic City have the kind of economic identities that they have, when just up the way, Margate, Linwood, I mean, even Northfield, they don't have the same shades of economic depravity that we do in some of our communities. And that is the long legacy of the way that racism evolves and morphs to fit the times.
Yes. Wow. As you said, that's even more of the legacy, that racism evolves.
It evolves.
Wow.
It evolves. W.E.B. Du Bois says that the moment the southern colonies, I can still call them colonies, but the moment and I'm from the South though, so for all my Southern folk out there, I'm a native of the southern part of our country. But the Southern states, immediately after they were reinstated into the Union, they tried to find ways to reforge slavery.
Wow.
So after slavery, you get the convict leasing system. And the convict leasing system is what says that if Black folk are not working, then we get to imprison them through vagrancy laws. It became illegal not to have a job. But how did you not have a job? Because the former slave masters said, why would we pay our former slaves to work these fields when we can go pay some poor white person to do it now, right? So now former slaves cannot work on their old plantations for a wage. Therefore, they are victims of vagrancy laws and get sucked into the convict leasing system. The convict leasing system then gives way to later on, it gives way to what we know now as mass incarceration. Racism, it finds a way of evolving and shape-shifting to the point that right now you have slavery happening legally behind bars, and we don't have any of the guilt connected
Big
to
business. Big business. Wow. And that's wow. And that's something that we talk about all the time, especially when it does come to our culture, how we're the populace behind the bars. And yet we lack the most. We lack the most. We were talking even about Mumia Abu Jamal, who's been incarcerated for years. But most of what he needed, even while behind bars, even not really finding him having as much evidence or guilty, he's serving time and still serving time. And it is with the lack of health care and the lack of necessities that he needs on a day-to-day basis to survive. And it just amazes me. We allow these things to continue to go on, but the mass incarceration that goes on, we're not even attending to the people that's behind those bars. Even during the pandemic, we learned about how many inmates were being released because they were afraid that COVID would spread so rapidly. But you can do it there, but you can't do it now. And it baffles me.
Right. And tough on crime Democrats, and who are cousins to these insane folk who live on the right. And I still do believe that there's some good Republicans in the world. I don't doubt that at all. But there is an extreme element. There's an extreme element that does exist in that particular party that I think does need some particular care. But you're right. It's people with power who decide who gets locked up, who deserves freedom, who deserves to be criminalized, who deserves to be seen as lovable, who deserves to be embraced. Because we shouldn't act as if prison is just about the time that you spend behind the bars. It is that there are consequences. No, that's too soft to say it. That there are implications and there are impositions that follow you long after you exit those walls, connected to employability, connected to whether one can go to college, connect whether one can find access to IDs, or whether one can vote again. Our state is better on the voting issue for formerly incarcerated persons than other states are, but still we have some issues in our states connected to that as well. But I just want to be clear about this, and I know the incarceration issue is just one issue, but we are 25% of the world's, we are 5% of the world's population, but we are 25% of the world's incarcerated population.
Wow.
From 1865 until 1968, there were less than 200,000 people in prison. From 1968 until the early 80s, when Reagan takes over, there are about 250,000 people who were in prison. Today, there are 2.2 million people in prison. In 50 years, our prison population has grown by 940%. Most of those Black and brown people, most of those connected to a war on drugs, where people are literally languishing behind walls in steel boxes for low-level drug offenses. And while we still have brothers and sisters who are incarcerated for drug charges, particularly weed charges, now in this state you have white men who are becoming millionaires, potentially billionaires, on a narcotic that some Black man is still locked up for.
My Lord. Isn't that something else?
Why? Because racism, it shapeshifts, it evolves.
It evolves. Wow. We did a report not too long ago based off of those very factors, of those who are incarcerated, whether wrongly or freed on parole, and how they became effectual citizens after being incarcerated and being back into population, civilization.
Hmm.
And the numbers that came up were sickening. They were disheartening. We were talking about identification, how to, even if you have been incarcerated, how to get identification and be able to vote. Well, then they started changing the policies for voting laws, even beginning in the smaller cities, and then moving polling places miles and miles away from where people could get to, because they knew you were wronging a lot of our citizens, American citizens, and telling them they weren't allowed to vote because of a misdemeanor or something that they had been charged with but had been found not guilty of doing. And it became a, I don't want to say obsessive, but it just made us look in through file after file to find out how many people this had gone through, and the people that had this issue, and it's very disheartening. So
Yeah,
how do we change that ramification?
yeah. I mean that's a great point, right? One is, and I know this is one of the cheap answers, but it really is, who is in power, who's making the laws. And you started with your first question was about the importance of the vote. As much as we have sort of romanticized what the vote means, I think, and how we got the vote, I still raise questions about, are we really maximizing it to its to its full extent? Because it's interesting that we are still sending people to our state legislature
Mm,
that do not have our interests in
right.
mind, and some of that is because we have become more invested in the fanfare of national elections that we forget the significance of local and state
Mm,
elections.
mm,
Part of our theory of change has to be, how do we raise awareness in our communities of the importance of the state election?
wow.
Because who's in the White House, it matters. No, don't get me wrong.
Right.
But what's more important than who's in the White House is actually who's on our city council,
Right.
who's on the school board, who's in
Right.
our state house, who's in our
I
governor's house.
concur.
Because the people who pass policy that
Yes.
impact kitchen table issues more directly are those who are closest to home. The laws that your city council passes, the ordinances that your city council
Yes.
passes, that impacts your front yard and your kitchen.
Absolutely.
The school board, that impacts what your children will learn and the environment that they will learn in. Biden, and Kamala are amazing people who are inspiring to a lot of folks. They're people who are inspired by Donald Trump and inspired by his vice president.
Yeah.
But the reality is that what mattered more, elections that mattered more than who we sent to the White House, was
Yes.
who did we send to City Hall, who did we send to the council,
Mm,
who did we send to the school board, who did we
yes.
send to the state house? Because these are the people who have direct impact through their pens on what
Yes.
our neighborhoods look like, what our houses look like, what our economies look like, what kind of jobs are being brought through our communities. And these are the types of shifts in how we think about electoral politics that can help change some of these issues that we're naming. We have to stop
Absolutely.
acting as if
Yeah.
what happens in Washington is the only thing that's going to impact what happens on our streets. Our
Yes.
streets are
I
impacted by the
concur.
people we aren't voting for because we don't even know the offices exist.
Mm. And a lot of people are not. We definitely have to educate people on those offices. You would be surprised at how many people don't know where the Board of Elections is in Mays Landing, or the
Mm,
county clerk, even though the address is on the New Jersey page. A lot of people have never been there. And
yeah,
I
yeah,
said this to some of my coworkers. I said, you guys, policy that comes from the governor's mansion doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to stand local, because they do give our local vicinities, our offices, the right to change those policies according to their municipality. And I said, no one's paying attention to that. We're hooraying and excited about who we get in office, but are they going to change the policies that help our students, help our children, help our communities? And you would be surprised that they don't. And it's
Yeah,
a money factor.
this is significant, and here's why I'm not surprised. And here's why I know you're not surprised. Is because they took civics out of public education for a reason.
Oh, absolutely. I believe
That
it.
we are there's an intentionality, a design for local communities not to understand the power that they carry as citizens of a democracy. Is that it is by design that we don't know the power of a city council person, the power of a mayor, that we don't know the power of a county commissioner and the power of a county executive. There's a reason why we don't understand that the state legislature is the legislature that decides so much of what happens in our communities and how much money is allocated from the state. There's a reason why certain people know that Biden is the president, but they don't know that Jeff Van Drew is the congressperson from our congressional district, because there's willful ignorance that exists in the world, but then there's the mass production of ignorance that lives in the world. And I actually don't fault. I don't fault people in our community for not knowing. I fault the failure of our institutions for not being the types of incubators of information and learning spaces that they can be. That if Black and brown folk in Pleasantville don't know what's happening in an election, that's my fault. Because I didn't mobilize enough people to get the information out where it needed to be.
Absolutely.
And that's what a leader does. A leader has to say what's happening in this community is partly my fault, and we don't just blame the people.
Wow. That's a mouthful, Pastor. That's a mouthful. I didn't call you on here to get in trouble. No, I'm just kidding. We appreciate here at Stage Left and Top Class Radio your effort and education, especially behind many of these laws, and helping our people to push forward and understand their rights within the law. I think that's also where we fall at. We don't understand our rights. We don't know our rights. And as often as when we protest, we throw those rights out there, a lot of the people really just don't know what those rights detail. They don't know what they are. And it doesn't, you say it doesn't surprise me. But I definitely know that we still have some work that needs to be done. And,
no question.
Man, you listen, I'm not going to bombard you with any more questions. You've answered enough. And we humbly appreciate you, Pastor Francois.
No, thank you for having me. This was a gift. You're a great thought partner. And again, the leadership that you offer to our community through art, through platforms like this, by showing up and marching. It's invaluable, and I hope you know that in this work we do lose a lot.
Yes,
but when we know who's in this with us, it gives us some energy to fight one more fight, and you serve as that kind of inspiration for me.
Thank you so much, Pastor. I'm humbled. I mean, you know how they say I'm sitting on the same side as the celebrity. I'm sitting on the same side as the pastor, and I'm grateful because I'm learning, and I'm learning to be steadfast and to endure, and that's what you all are definitely imparting in me, and I appreciate it. We appreciate it, and you got keep us informed. I get all of your emails. I just want you to know, I get all of your emails.
Wow.
I definitely get them all. I'm always interested in the courses in the class. So one of these classes you definitely will see me at. And I'm always looking to be certified in any way capacity that I can to help the community. So thank you for opening up these platforms and bringing such platforms here to little old Pleasantville so that we can be informed as well and grow. Trenton misses you, I'm telling you. We need you back in Trenton. Absecon does too. So, but thank you so much, Pastor Francois.
Thank you.
And please, before we go, I would love for you to tell everyone how they can go and purchase your books, where they can go to support you and follow you and get your information.
Sure. You can check out the book, Silencing White Noise, 6 Practices for Overcoming Our Inaction on Race. You can find that on Amazon or wherever you buy books. It's available there. I can be reached at on Twitter and on IG at Willie Francois 3, the number 3, the numeral 3, and also Facebook, Willie Dwayne Francois the third. Also run to MountZionCLC.org, where you can see all that our faith community is trying to do to bring a love revolution to New Jersey.
Yeah, no doubt. I love that. A love revolution. There's our intention today, y'all. Be intentional about your love revolution. We got to bring that in and do that and make it grand so people know they can't come in here and step on us. Be one community large, one community strong, and one community in love and moving in the right direction. Pastor Francois, we appreciate you. Thank you. Hold on to the line. Everybody out there, listen, you already know this, your girl, your big sis, L Vintage. I told you was in for a treat. If you missed it, you can go back and press play or rewind, fast forward, and, all that good stuff. But we appreciate you. You're the best audience out there. Thank you for rocking with Stage Left and Top Class Radio right here from Facebook Live. It's going to be on YouTube. You know what to do. Go and click like, follow, and share. Go check out Pastor Francois. You know how to get his books. Amazon, wherever you can purchase them. And make sure you support. I love y'all. You already know. Peace.